When my mom answered janitor to my soon-to-be father-in-law's question about her job, his whole family burst into laughter. "A cleaning lady? That's as low as it gets," they said, mocking her. I was shocked they would make fun of my mother, who raised me on her own. I couldn't imagine becoming family with such cruel people. I told them coldly, "Let's pretend this conversation never happened. My name is Emily Yale, and I'm 26. I graduated from a public university with a degree in education and work as a high school English teacher. I live a pretty happy life." Today, I was excited to go on a midweek date with my boyfriend, John, at a nice restaurant he'd booked. "Sorry to keep you waiting," I said as I arrived. "You too, thanks for working so hard every day," he replied. John and I are the same age. He went to medical school and is now a resident doctor. We met in college and have been dating for 5 years. He's incredibly kind, and sometimes I feel like he's almost too good to be true. We've been through tough times, especially while studying for exams, but we always worked things out and supported each other. As I was finishing dessert, I noticed the restaurant seemed fancier than usual. Suddenly, John looked serious. "My residency will be over soon, and medicine is a tough job, but I want to do my best as a doctor, with you by my side. Emily, will you marry me?" He held out a ring. Tears came to my eyes as I looked at him. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I'm so happy. I believe we can support each other through anything." I accepted his proposal, thinking my mom would be thrilled for us. My mom, Linda, lost her husband when I was young and raised me by herself. Even though her father, my grandfather, suggested we move in with him, she chose to live alone with me, and we've been together just the two of us ever since. I didn't even meet my grandparents until I was in elementary school. My mom would sometimes say, "I might have made you suffer because I got married young and couldn't rely on family right away," but I never felt that way. My mom was always positive, loving, and supportive. She's the most important person in my life and someone I look up to. When I told her about my engagement to John, she blessed us with all her heart. "Thank you. I look forward to our future together," John said, smiling. My mom was almost in tears from happiness, and I felt grateful to have her support. "We'll need to meet your parents soon too," I reminded John. "Of course," he replied. "I went to boarding school from middle school through high school, so I haven't seen my family much, but I think they'll be happy for us." My mom added, "Make sure to introduce yourself properly to John's family. Dear, you're going to be part of their family now." She was fully supportive of our relationship. I knew John's family was very different from mine. His father ran his own hospital. His mother was a stay-at-home housewife, and he had a younger brother still in high school. I hoped we'd get along, but I was definitely nervous about meeting them. "Don't worry," John assured me. "I'll arrange a place for us to live after we're married." "Thank you," I replied, a little anxious but hopeful about our future. I believed everything would go smoothly, that is, until the day we actually met his family. 2 months later, we met at a fancy restaurant in a private room. John's parents and younger brother arrived a little late. When they entered, John introduced everyone. "Nice to meet you all. This is my mom," he said. "My dad runs an internal medicine clinic, and my mom is a full-time housewife. And this is my younger brother. He's a senior in high school." His parents were dressed elegantly, as I expected, but his brother looked like a bit of a rebel, with brown hair, a messy school uniform, and his eyes glued to his phone. After the introductions, John began, "I'm planning to marry her." But his father interrupted gently, stroking his mustache. "First, let's get to know her family. If we're joining families, we need to understand her background and character." His mother also studied us closely, her eyes sharp. Then she asked, "And where's your father today?" I'd asked John to let them know that I came from a single-parent household, but something felt off. Their reactions weren't what I expected, and a sense of unease crept in. "My father passed away when I was young, and my mother raised me on her own," I explained. John's younger brother wrinkled his face in exaggerated disgust and muttered, "Really? A single-mother household? Unbelievable." This rude comment came from John's arrogant younger brother, who sat back with his legs crossed, showing a smug attitude. "What do you mean, unbelievable?" I replied, my voice rising. "My mother raised me by herself, and I'm incredibly grateful to her." "Watch your mouth and put away that phone," John scolded his brother, who turned away in annoyance. Then John's mother turned to me. "You're a high school teacher, right?" "Yes, I teach English at a public high school," I answered politely, but right after I spoke, his family started sharing their blunt opinions. "A teacher? We don't have any teachers in our family, and she's in the humanities, someone remarked. Isn't that unsuitable for our son? We always wanted him to marry a doctor's daughter, his mother said dismissively. A public high school teacher seems plain and probably doesn't make much money. Hearing this, I felt like I was in a completely different world. Even John's brother joined in, mentioning that he already had a recommendation for medical school. I was stunned by their comments, but John quickly defended me. She's a wonderful person, and she's committed to her work. Don't speak to her like that, he said firmly. At that, his father turned to my mom and said, we haven't given our blessing for their marriage yet. A single mother household, and she's a teacher. What about you, ma'am? Can you tell us about your education and job? My mom stood her ground and replied calmly, since my husband passed away, I've done various jobs to support my daughter. Right now, I work part-time as a janitor at a hospital and a school. I only finished middle school. But before she could finish, John's family exchanged looks and began to laugh mockingly. Oh my, she only went to middle school and works part-time as a janitor? One of them sneered. She must have been very poor. John's father shook his head dismissively. Even with a high school education, it's rough. And now, a cleaning lady? He added, belittling her. That's as low as it gets. John's younger brother looked at my mom with disgust. So, your mother only finished middle school and works as a janitor? I can't even imagine living like that. He sneered. Are you only marrying into our family for the money? John's mother furrowed her eyebrows dramatically, delivering the final blow. Just as I thought, we absolutely cannot approve this marriage. Then his father spoke as if giving a final verdict. I was stunned. It was one thing for them to insult me, but to mock my mother, who raised me on her own, was too much. I couldn't imagine joining a family like this. I motioned for my mom to stay seated and stood up. I understand how you all feel, so let's consider this meeting as if it never happened. Is that acceptable? I said, my voice cold and expression blank. After a moment of silence, his family exchanged glances and burst out laughing. You thought you were making an important announcement, they sneered. We're the ones who wanted to end the engagement. Did you realize you were about to be rejected and, out of pride, decided to break it off yourself? His parents looked smug. Wait, that's not it. John couldn't tolerate their behavior anymore and quickly spoke up. I'm sorry, I can't be part of this family if they're so disrespectful. I'm truly sorry, he said, apologizing to me and my mother. For a moment, his parents stopped laughing, surprised by John's serious tone. Why are you apologizing? His mother snapped. You should find someone more suitable, maybe a fellow doctor or even a wealthy woman. I stopped John from saying anything more and asked his family a question. Would it have been different if I were a wealthy heiress? His mother replied, of course, even if you're not a doctor, being wealthy would be no problem. You could support our hospital financially, right, dear? His father nodded. That might actually be better for us. I realized it was time to reveal the truth. So, you turned down such an opportunity? I said, a hint of challenge in my voice. They looked at me, confused. What do you mean? Are you sure you wouldn't want to miss out on what I could bring to this family? I replied, holding their gaze as their expressions shifted to curiosity and disbelief. John sighed heavily, rubbing his temples in frustration. What's wrong? You've been acting strange, his father asked, clearly not understanding the situation. Did you even listen to their introductions? John replied, exasperated. Doesn't the name Yale mean anything to you? His father looked confused for a moment, then dismissive. Yale? No, why would I remember a name like that? John sighed and clarified. My fiancé's grandfather is the chairman of Yale Academy, the elite institution with schools from kindergarten to university, including a medical school and a hospital. His father's eyes widened in shock. Wait, that Yale? Yes, that Yale, John confirmed, now looking at his parents with a stern expression. I took this opportunity to speak up. You're surprised? You thought I was lying because my mother is a janitor? Well, she is, but not in the way you think. They looked at me, puzzled. My mother works as a janitor in hospitals and schools. Yes, but I'm talking about Yale hospitals and graduate schools. She's undercover, observing the actual conditions in the schools and hospitals. It's part of a task assigned directly by my grandfather to ensure quality and uncover any issues. His parents were stunned. They exchanged worried glances and stammered. Why didn't you tell us something so important earlier? Maybe you would have known if you'd actually listened to what I was saying instead of making assumptions. I said coldly, but it's too late for that. You insulted my mother without knowing the full story. Then I added quietly, by the way, my mother didn't leave school because of a lack of ambition, she had to drop out of middle school due to poor health as a child. My mom has a brother who carries on the family line, so when she was young, my grandfather prioritized her health over education. After middle school, she moved to the countryside to rest and recover. While living there, she met my father, and they fell in love. My grandparents had wanted her to marry into a prestigious family, so she had a huge argument with them and left to start a new life with my dad. They lived independently, without support from her family. When my father passed away, my grandparents suggested that we move back with them, knowing my mom was raising me alone. But my mom was too proud to go back right away, she felt guilty about how she'd left. Over time, though, they started reconnecting. My mom even changed her last name back to Yale, to help give me a stronger future. John's younger brother looked shocked and speechless, so I turned to him and asked, I heard you got recommended for medical school, which one? The unexpected question caught him off guard. Vassar College, he stammered. At that, his mom suddenly looked nervous, realizing something. Vassar College is a sister school to Yale, she said quietly. If today's events were reported, your admission recommendation could be in trouble, right? John's father tried to brush it off, but in his flustered state, he accidentally admitted, we paid a little extra to help him make up for his grades. There's no way that can be revoked now. Both John and I reacted in shock. Dad, you bribed someone for him to get in? John asked. No, that's not what I meant, his father stammered, clearly rattled. His mother and younger brother were looking pale. I continued, the president of Vassar College is my uncle. If I report this, I'm sure he'll investigate. His mother, her face turning red, snapped, you don't have the authority to make threats like that. No, I don't, I replied calmly, but I've already been offered a position to eventually work at Yale. I'm currently teaching in a public school to gain experience, as a condition for that role. At that, her tone softened. Oh, let's not dwell on the past. Can't we just let bygones be bygones? Let's not let a misunderstanding ruin a good thing, she said, trying to smooth things over. His father quickly agreed. Yes, John is the future heir to our clinic. He needs our approval to marry. You want to marry John, don't you? Even his brother chimed in. Yeah, just let them get married and promise not to report anything about me. The three of them, his mother, father, and brother, were now practically begging me to overlook their behavior, desperate to keep things quiet for their own gain. John stood up, furious. I don't need your permission to get married. I'm cutting ties with all of you. His family stared at him, shocked. I always thought you were stuck up because you're from a family of doctors, but I never imagined you'd act like this during an important first meeting with my fiancé. I'm ashamed of how you spoke to her and her mom, and bribing someone to get my brother into med school? That's disgraceful. Wait, what are you saying? His mother stammered. I don't consider you my family anymore, John continued firmly. I'm marrying her, and we'll be happy together, stay out of our lives for good. The parents panicked. So you're saying you're not going to take over the clinic? But if your younger brother doesn't get into medical school, we won't have an heir. John shook his head. I don't care, I have no intention of taking over. After graduating from Yale, I was offered a position as a surgeon, and I plan to work in a hospital, not at your clinic. His family was in chaos. Please think this over, his mother pleaded. We have patients who expect you to take over the clinic. Even his brother chimed in. Come on, bro, I won't have anywhere to work if you don't take over. Ignoring their pleas, John turned to my mom. I'm truly sorry for everything. I want to cut ties with my family and start a life with your daughter. Please allow us to get married. John's voice trembled slightly. My mother placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and replied, you don't have to apologize. I didn't fall for you because you're a doctor. I love you for your kindness and sincerity. She nodded at him and added, I can see that you're a good man, and I want to support your dreams and happiness. Thank you, he replied, bowing respectfully, his gratitude clear. My mother smiled, and together, we left the restaurant. As we departed, she handed John's family the business card of Yale's legal advisor, in case they had any further questions. 1 year later, John and I are happily married. He works as a talented and dedicated surgeon, even with the long hours and little sleep. Watching him pursue his dreams brings me joy. My grandfather, who has grown fond of John, often says how proud he is of him. My grandfather hopes that one day John will join Yale University's hospital. As for John's family, things took a turn. The bribery that got his younger brother a recommendation for medical school was uncovered, and the teacher who accepted the bribe was punished. Since his brother was already a poor student with no grades to back him up, his recommendation was revoked. He tried to get into medical school through regular admissions, but he didn't pass. Now, he's supposed to be studying while taking a gap year, though it's unclear how serious he is about it. Hopefully, this experience will teach him the value of hard work and empathy. Meanwhile, John's parents' clinic has struggled. Patients began leaving after realizing John wouldn't take over, and financial problems quickly grew. His father's arrogance and his mother's difficult attitude led to nurses and other staff quitting. News of the college bribery scandal spread, causing relatives and people in the industry to avoid them. Finally, they had no choice but to close the clinic. As for me, my grandfather has asked me to study educational administration so that, in addition to being a teacher, I can also contribute to managing our family's educational institutions. Guided by my uncle and experienced mentors, I'm learning how to grow as a professional, step by step. Seeing me take on these challenges, my mom is proud, saying it's wonderful to see our family becoming stronger together. Her words mean a lot to me, and I feel deeply grateful. My days are busy, and there's so much to learn, but I'm blessed with a fulfilling life and endless support from my beloved mother and husband.